Alafia to everyone. So in this video, I wanted to discuss the different trauma responses and how we can mislabel trauma responses as being our personality. As a community, we have been known to mislabel even trauma as just being life, or not even recognizing trauma when it has occurred to us. We will put the name culture on it. We'll just say that's the culture, or life happens. And so we never are given the opportunity to actually sit down and heal from the trauma, because we are unable to even recognize it as it has happened. And for a lot of us, trauma has occurred in our childhoods, and unfortunately the adults in our lives, they have unhealed trauma that they have not healed from. So they are unable to help give us a healing plan, or even recognize that our behavior is a reaction from trauma that we have experienced or even experiencing. So I just kind of want to give an overview of what trauma is. So trauma is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. And this can range from the family losing financial security, losing a loved one, the physical absence of a parent, or even the emotional absence of a parent, sexual abuse, a parent who is an alcoholic or abusing drugs. And so there's a wide variety of what trauma is and how it occurs. And so I think the first step would be to recognize trauma, and for us to start, when trauma occurs, to not label as it just being life anymore. And so what happens is, when trauma occurs, your body will automatically start releasing these endorphins, and it will release these hormones, which I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with the fight and flight mode. And so your body will go into that mode. But what happens if you never sat there and you've never unpacked what's going on and healed from that trauma, it will keep occurring and occurring. And the way these trauma responses will start to show up, we think they are just our personality. So I want to go over the different trauma responses and how they'll start showing up in ways that it looks like our personality. So the first one is going to be fight. And so fight, of course, when trauma first occurs, it's like the mama bear. When she is feeling like she's being threatened, or there is threat that's going to happen, she goes into that fight mode. She's not going to let nothing happen to her babies. And so that's what happens to us first. We'll go into a fight mode. But after the trauma has occurred, and if we have not healed from that trauma, the ways it'll start showing up in explosive outbursts, anger, defiance, demanding, having to be in control of everything. And this is something I think I see in a lot of our Black men. The explosive outbursts, the anger, the defiance, and they get labeled at a young age as just being a child that is hard to handle. But in reality, what's going on is that they have experienced a trauma and they have not healed from it. And so now it's starting to show up. It's occurring anytime that they feel a threat. This is their way of dealing with it. So the second is flight. And so if you don't go into fight mode, if you feel like, okay, this is a threat and I can't take this on, what you're gonna do? You're gonna run. So the way flight can start showing up is as anxiety, fidgeting, over worrying, being a workaholic, and it can be mislabeled as OCD. And so that, I'm definitely learning, is a lot of people who I feel like have anxiety, and there's different forms of anxiety. So this is a way that the trauma response will show up in ways that we think might just be your personality. I think, everyone knows someone who over worries. Like, they always see the worst in every situation. And the reason why that is because they have experienced a trauma, and the worst might have occurred for them when they were young. And so now they think that situation is going to continue to happen, or, they've experienced the universe throwing the worst at them, so they don't expect anything more. They automatically expect the worst to happen. And so the third is freeze. And freeze is disassociating in response to the perceived threat. And that can be related to spacing out, losing time, feeling unreal, brain fog, and feeling numb. I think the way this personality, a person that experiences this kind of trauma response, their personality is more of, you're like, are you even there? Are you listening to me? They're always kind of like out there, or they don't seem like they're present, or they don't seem like they really know what's going on at the moment. And so the fourth is fawn, which is placating the perceived threat in order to forestall immediate danger. And this can show up as being people-pleasing, fear to express yourself, being the yes person, and fear of fitting in. And that is because in the fawn is, okay, I'm gonna try and not, let's stall this threat as much as we can. And so that's where the yes person comes in, because if I'm always pleasing you, then you're not gonna get angry. You're not gonna give these outbursts. And so that can show up like if you experience childhood trauma with maybe, say, a parent that is prone to anger outbursts, you become that people pleaser because you try to always get it right because you don't want them to explode. And so that's ways that it come up. So you thinking when you become an adult, oh, I'm just a people pleaser. That's how I'm wired. I just, like to always make sure people's happy. Well, it's a reason why. It's a reason because when you were younger, you did that to survive. You thought that I have to do this to survive this environment. The fifth is flood. And this is when you're flooded with emotions. And this comes where if you've ever experienced when everything could be going good. Everything could be going good. And then all of a sudden, you get this one negative thought. You're like, where is this coming from? But then that one negative thought, it turns into 100 in less than a minute. And so that's the flooded. And I relate that too as someone with a personality that's always overthinking. You're always overthinking things. You always have something going on in your head. It's always something going on. And the sixth is fatigue, which of course we know that's just being tired and sleepy. And I can say, let's say if you've ever experienced being super stressful and you're like, I just need a nap. I just need to go and sit. I just need a reset. And that is where that is coming from. That's actually you responding to trauma. And so we have to understand that the trauma response is not typically a one and done process. When the distress system initially presents itself, and if we don't regulate our response, it will continue to show up. And then that's how it turns into those, what we think is our personality, because it's showing up every day in our life. That anxiety, that need to control, that overthinking, that over worrying, is showing up every day because we have not sat down and dealt with that trauma. And so because it's showing up every day, we start to believe this is who we are. This is just how we are wired. When in reality, no, you are not wired like that. You are still responding to trauma you have never healed from. And so the first thing to do is to recognize that I have experienced trauma, is to label it as being trauma, to lay it out and start doing that healing work. And it is not easy. It is hard. And this is why a lot of people won't do trauma work. They won't do trauma healing, because it'll start to bring up emotions and feelings that you have pat down for years, centuries, depending how old you are. And now you're starting to bring them to surface. And these could be experiences and emotions and feelings that you have forgotten about. And even though you forgot about them, your subconscious has not forgotten about them. And so that is why it's showing up daily in your life. And so until you actually sit down and you start doing that healing work, then that's when you start shifting the energy. And when you start to shift that energy, you'll see less of that trauma response, and what you thought was your personality and then your true self will start to shine through. And so for me, on my journey of healing, I realized that I had experienced a lot more trauma than I knew I had experienced or I was conscious of. And so on this journey, that one trauma made me sit down and bring up everything and see it for what it was, and then turn that energy into something else. And I believe we can do that. I definitely believe that we can change this trauma energy into light, into love. But we can't do that if we ignore it, and we can't do that if we mislabel it, and we can't do that if we don't bring it to the surface and we do that work. And so what ends up happening again is we create daily, where our body is daily reacting to trauma and daily bringing up these trauma responses. And doing this research on trauma healing, I came across where a lady was saying that trauma, and if you don't do the work to heal from trauma, you're more likely to have diabetes. You're more likely to have high blood pressure. You're more likely to have cancer, heart disease. And it makes a lot of sense, because that trauma is energy. And if it's this negative energy that you are just holding in yourself, and not only are you holding it in, but it's literally coming up, because anytime something occurs where you think is a perceived threat, or it's making you remember that trauma, you're bringing that up day to day. And so that energy has to go somewhere. And I'm a strong believer in we can turn that negative energy into a positive energy, and to where it flows out of us in a different flow. And so I hope everyone from this video, first give yourself grace, okay? Because during this, when you are healing from trauma, it is not easy work. It is not easy work. I can definitely attend to that. But I can also say that the work you do from trauma, the work you do from healing from trauma, on that other side, it is so worth it. It is so worth it. But also to remember, it's something daily. It is something daily you have to work at. And so it is something daily you have to work at. And it'll never be something that, you've conquered it. That healing work will, in this lifetime for you, it would continue, and you have to always do that healing work. But again, like I said, it is definitely worth it. I know if I hadn't done that healing work, and I am nowhere near where I feel like I need to be. But I do know that if I hadn't sat down and did the hard, nitty-gritty stuff first, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. I wouldn't be here on this side of the camera telling you guys my message. And so for me, I want to be able to give these messages to you guys and let you know what has helped me along this journey. And so, like I said, I don't think we bring light to trauma healing in our community enough. Like, that is not, we had to have survived for so long. So when you have to just survive, you don't have time to think about the traumas and to start vibrating at a higher level. You're just trying to survive. And so now let's no longer just live to survive, but let's live to thrive. Let's live to lift our energy and start vibrating at a higher level. So I pray that this message reaches everyone with love, light, and grace. And you're able to take, even if it's one small, tiny step to healing, that this helps you guys along the way. Bye. Love you guys.